Hi, my name is Kate Foley, and I will be talking about the wastewater cleanup of the Blackstone River. In my presentation, I will be talking about the process on how the water is cleaned, where the Blackstone River leads to, and how long it is, and why it's important for the water to be cleaned, and if it's not, what are the effects. Length and location. The whole Blackstone River is 48 miles long and it extends from Worcester, Mass. To Providence, Rhode Island. It was created as a way to connect Worcester and the Blackstone Valley towns to the sea at Narragansett Bay. It is joined by 6 major rivers, and these waterways drain a land area of over 545 square miles. Pollution on the land gets washed into the waterways directly or into the storm drain system, then directly drains to the nearest waterways. This is how the Blackstone is so polluted. In the picture I have, it shows the route from Worcester to Providence, Rhode Island, and how many twists and turns it has. And in the second picture, it shows the upper Blackstone treatment tanks in Millbury, Mass., and this is where the water is cleaned. So, some background information. The Blackstone River Valley was the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution. A man named Moses Brown, who was a Providence merchant, built a new factory to spin cotton fiber along the water line and used water power from the Blackstone River Valley. With the success of Moses Brown and Slater Mill, who was one of his workers, he inspired other entrepreneurs to build their own mills and use the water power advantages and water power sources. So Providence encourages production of market among farmers, while Worcester is a major market town for central Massachusetts and began to stand out as a major industrial city. After funds were raised and the land was secure, all they had to do was lay out an easy route, but in New England is kind of hard. It will rarely be a straight line considering we have so many hills. So they had to build locks and inclines with winches so they could lower and raise the boats over the hills if needed. Also, with unpredictable soil conditions, the difficulties of ensuring suitable water supply for the canal and locks raised complications with building expenses. It wasn't until the railroad that people didn't see the need to use the canal anymore. Goods could be transported from one area to another in the matter of minutes. It offered the same services as the canal, but just a little bit better. So the Blackstone River was one of the most polluted rivers in the country with concerning toxic sediments. While toxic sediments were trapped behind industrial era dams, they continued to pollute the long-term health of the river. The goal now is to reduce the industrial related conditions, such as the toxic sediment buildups behind the dams, and also work on environmental cleanup in the area. So the picture I have in this slide, it is horses pulling a boat transferring goods to another town down the river. It's sort of hard to see, but there's someone standing on top of the boat who is fishing, and they're probably going to sell the fish that they just caught. So the cleanup process, in this section, I'm focusing more on the cleanup process at the upper Blackstone treatment tanks in Millbury, Mass., and how they clean the water here. So a reason for the pollution is development without proper sediment containment, where there is excessive stormwater runoff and certain landscaping maintenances are practiced here. So both surface and groundwater are affected by non-point source pollution. So first, the water goes into the grit removal tanks, where sand and other abrasive materials that could damage the pumps are removed. Then it goes to the primary clarifiers, where suspended solids and organic materials such as grease, oil, and other floating materials are removed. Next, it goes into the bioreactors, where biological nutrients are removed. Then onto the aeration tanks, also known as mechanical mixers, where there is an environment that is provided for living organisms to feed on the pollutants in the wastewater. Next, the water goes into the settling tanks where any remaining suspended solids are removed before the water is disinfected. And lastly, the water goes into the disinfecting tanks where it goes through a disinfecting chlorination process and a subsequent dechlorination before leaving the treatment plant. As the water flows out into the Blackstone, algae and weeds can maintain a steady growth and keep the plants and animals healthy. What happens if there's no cleanup? So, with too much nitrogen and phosphorus in the water, this causes algae to grow too fast, and it causes the ecosystem to struggle to try to keep up with the algae buildup. Large growths of algae are called algae blooms, and they can severely reduce or eliminate oxygen in the water, leading to illness in fish and death of large numbers of fish. Another problem is oxygen depletion. This is caused when there's too many biodegradable materials added to the water, and the number of microorganisms increases and uses up the available oxygen. So why did the cleanup occur? The water still doesn't meet the water quality standards that the Clean Water Act of 1972 mandated to be met by 1987, but it is somewhat safe for water activities. In July of 2002, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, and the U.S. Army entered into a message of understanding to address the water quality issues, economic renewal, and the public use of enjoyment of urban rivers. On December 19, 2014, President Obama signed the legislation that established the Blackstone Valley National Historical Park as the 402nd park in the nation's national park system. This is important because it showed the cleanup process was working. It was just taking a while, but it also recognized the historical and economical value of the Blackstone. In the future, with this process, the river's conditions today are much better than it was when the correlation formed in the 2000s. But with this process still occurring in the future, the water could one day be safe for swimming and water activities. Even though there will always still be some pollutants that will be raised during a strong storm or even just over time, there will be more heavy metalled and fewer chemicals, meaning that there will be fewer soluble sulfides and hydroxides, so fewer pollutants in the actual water. In this picture, it is a boat tour of the Blackstone. They do these in Providence, Rhode Island, but now with the cleanup process still working and keeping the water less polluted, they are giving tours on how they keep the water clean and the history of the canal. So, some things you can do to help. You can reduce water consumption by using less tap water. It prevents unnecessary chemical treatments and disposal from other treatment plants. It also saves you money on your water bill, so that is a plus. And next, by buying sulfate-free detergents and cleaners. If you have a sewer system or a septic tank, sulfides eventually find their way into the waterways and accelerate plant growth, which can cause oxygen depletion, but it can also block your pipes, leading your pipes to burst. And lastly, you can limit your use of fertilizers and pesticides. These are very, very harmful to aquatic life, and they create algae blooms that kill aquatic animals. So by limiting your use when it rains, the water and the pesticides won't end up in your storm drains. So some other ways you can also help. You can clean and maintain storm drains. So that would be removing leaves off the top of the storm drains. Also stop using pesticides, as I said before, so they're prevented from draining into the storm drains. Also keep parking lots and loading areas clean, so don't litter, and if you see trash on the ground, just pick it up and throw it away. Also ensure dumpsters remain closed and are leak-proof. This prevents pollutants from entering into the storm drains when it rains. Also move stored materials inside or keep them properly covered. So these would be construction materials. So these are my references, and that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.